My name is Claire. I grew up in a small town called Maple Creek where winters came with sharp, icy winds and summers smelled like fresh grass and warm apple pie, but my childhood memories were never as warm as those summers when my little sister Ava was born. I was 6. My parents hugged me and said I'd have a best friend forever. What they didn't say was that I'd become invisible in my own home. I remember the day Ava came home. Mom had a whole table set with balloons, cake, and cards hanging all over the living room. I was told to stand aside. Don't touch anything, Claire. It's all for Ava. Mom said, her voice more like a command than advice from that day on. Every spotlight in the house seemed to shine on my sister Madison was Mom's little angel and Dad's princess. And me, I was the one pouring water, mopping floors, and doing homework alone. Every morning, Mom cooked breakfast exactly how Ava liked it, heart-shaped pancakes with maple syrup and chopped strawberries. I got a cold piece of toast and a cold stare once I needed new glasses because I couldn't see the board in class. Anymore, Dad looked at me and said, "Make do with the old ones, Madison's birthday is coming. We need to save for a big cake." I didn't respond, just nodded quietly. 2 weeks later, Ava asked. For a pink bicycle with a flower basket, Dad handed over his credit card without blinking. I used to think I was just too sensitive, that I was imagining things, but when I was 12, the truth hit me like a slap. I made it to the state finals of a writing competition, an honor given to only one student from the entire school. I excitedly showed the invitation to my mom, hoping for praise. She glanced at it and set it down in the sink. "Madison's birthday party is this Sunday. Try to get there on your own. I'm busy." So I went alone, 2 hours on a bus, clutching my manuscript printed on an old printer. I didn't win, but I'll never forget sitting silently in the auditorium, watching classmates cheered on by their families, while I sat alone. Like I was from another planet, Madison grew up with everything handed to her. The nicest dresses, the most expensive toys, and the unconditional admiration of our parents. She got used to bossing me around, borrowing my things without asking, blaming me when she messed up and always being defended, no matter what. "Don't be selfish," Claire Mom once said when I refused to let Ava take the new jacket Grandma had mailed just for me. "Madison needs it for a birthday party. You can wear the old one," I learned. To stay quiet, to swallow my frustration, and to find comfort in books, schoolwork, and test scores. I always aced school. Became the one place where I could breathe, where I could just be me. I built a quiet little world for myself, one where I didn't have to ask permission to feel loved, and before I was even 13, I made myself a promise. One day I'd leave Maple Creek, I'd step out of Ava's shadow, and I would never look back. I got into the Boston University on a full scholarship thanks to an essay I wrote about growing up invisible. When I held the acceptance letter in my hands, my heart raced for the first time someone, even just a panel of strangers, had seen me and valued me. I placed the letter on the dinner table that evening, hoping for a hug. "A congratulation, that's nice," Mom said. "But this weekend, Ava's auditioning for the junior vocal group at the town art center. We all need to focus on her. Let's not change the mood." She didn't even look up from the chicken she was frying. I nodded. I didn't feel sad anymore, just hollow, like I'd been ignored for so long that their indifference didn't hurt anymore. That fall, I left Maple Creek with just one small suitcase and dreams bigger than the sky. I majored in marketing, where creativity met strategy, and threw myself into my studies. No one came to see me off, no farewell party, no hug. But I boarded that bus with my head held high, knowing I was finally taking a different path, my own at college. I felt reborn. No one called me Ava's sister. I was Claire Brooks, the one who always raised her hand first. In class, who pitched the boldest ideas in group projects, who got emails from professors saying, "Your presentation exceeded all expectations." I got a part-time job at a cafe near my dorm. I studied in the mornings, worked in the afternoons, and stayed up late finishing assignments. No spring break, no weekend trips, but I had a plan: graduate a semester early and gain real-world experience as soon as I could when my classmates went home for the holidays. I stayed on campus, working as a research assistant for a professor studying consumer behavior. I chose work over family because the place I called home never felt like one. 3 years later, I graduated with honors and got a full-time offer from Harper & Lane, one of the top marketing firms in the region. Where I had interned during my junior year summer, I moved to Boston, rented a small apartment in West Loop, and started building a new life free of Ava's shadow and my mother's disapproving looks. Every morning I walked into the office, sat at my desk by the 12th floor window, and looked out at the busy streets with peace in my heart. I was no longer the kid, hiding behind the curtain. While Ava got music lessons and art classes, I was a woman with a voice, with recognition, and the power to choose her own direction. Every now and then, I'd get a text from Mom always about Ava. She's interning at a fashion brand, or Ava was on TV performing for the mayor. Did you see? Not once did. She asked how I was. Not once did she mention my job or the things I worked so hard to achieve. I'd reply, "That's great, congrats," to her, and put my phone down one day during an important internal meeting. I presented a campaign called Human Brand, where I tied emotional connection into every layer of marketing. The room went silent. Then the director nodded. "This campaign. It really hits, Claire. You made me reflect on myself that night." I went home, opened my laptop, checked the company dashboard, and saw my first year performance bonus, 6 figures. I cried not for the money, but because someone had finally told me, "You move people." I printed out that email and taped it to the fridge, something my childhood home never had, so I'd see it every morning and remember I did this then, one weekend afternoon. As I was reading by the window, my phone rang. The screen said, "Mom calling." I stared at it. I wasn't going to answer, but part of me was curious after all these months. What did she want? It turned out to be an invitation, a stiff, formal one to Ava's engagement party. "You should come. The whole family will be there," she said, as if I wasn't part of the family anymore. I meant to decline. But somehow I said yes. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I just wanted to see with my own eyes how radiant Ava was as the star of the show. I returned to Maple Creek, sitting quietly in the far corner of the party like a stranger in my own family. No one asked about my job or life in Boston. Mom spoke to me in soft surface-level tones, just for appearances, but one person stood out. Andrew, the groom's best friend. He was a freelance photographer from Denver, back in town temporarily for a community project. We only talked for a few minutes at the party, but ended up texting for hours afterward. Andrew wasn't like any man I'd ever met. He didn't look at me through the lens of Ava's sister or as a resume or performance score. He looked straight at me and truly listened. We started a long-distance relationship, and one late autumn day, he moved to Boston with an old camera and 2 stray cats he was fostering a year. Later, I said yes to his proposal in the middle of a rainy afternoon. Before he could even kneel, I blurted out, "Yes." We laughed all the way home. Marriage hasn't always been easy, especially with both of us chasing our passions, but Ethan always knows how to make me feel loved, even if it's just a hot cup of coffee when I wake up, or a sticky note on my laptop that says, "You're still amazing today." We welcomed our son Noah when I was 32, a little boy with his father's gray eyes and a smile that made me feel like I wasn't missing anything in life. I used to fear motherhood, afraid I'd repeat the way my mother treated me. But Noah taught me that love isn't something you have to fight for. It's something that blooms naturally when you truly want the best for someone. Those first nights, I walked around the living room holding my baby, lulling him to sleep with soft jazz playing in the background. Andrew would usually sit at the corner table editing photos, but he always looked up whenever I sighed. "Let me change the diaper." And he'd say like it was a rescue, and I realized that was the family I had once dreamed of. Elliot grew up in a small apartment filled with drawings and storybooks, where every cry was met with patience, not frustration. We didn't have much, but we had enough so that Noah would never have to ask, "Mom, do you love me?" Like I used to wonder for years, but everything started to shift when Noah turned 3. Andrew accepted a major project in Portland, one that would last 6 months. I supported. Him going his career mattered just as much as mine. But the distance began to stretch between us. Calls got shorter, replies to texts came slower. Then one Tuesday night, just after I put Noah to bed, Ethan called Diana. "I think we need to talk." He hesitated. "I've met someone in Portland." It didn't start out serious. But now I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt a familiar emptiness wash over me like an old song. It was the same hollow feeling I'd had when my mom brushed off my achievements to praise Ava, and now it was back in a different form. The man I loved most had taken a road that didn't include me or Noah. Andrew apologized over and over. He said he would still be a responsible father, that he'd support Noah, that he wouldn't disappear. But the family I thought was solid was now just me and my son that night. I sat on the floor, leaning against Noah's crib. He slept soundly, unaware that his world had just shifted. I looked at him and silently promised I would not let him grow up the way I did, even if it was just the two of us. Noah would know that to me he was never an afterthought. He was my priority, my love, my everything after that fateful call. Ethan packed his things and moved out. No shouting, no fight. Everything ended as quietly as it had begun. Just me alone in the kitchen the next morning, staring at the empty space where his coffee mug used to sit. I didn't let myself fall apart. Not for Noah, he needed an adult who could face the world, not a mother who cried. Every time he fell asleep and when everything seemed like it was falling apart, something unexpected happened from the last place I thought. It would Ethan's family. The very next day, I got a call from Margaret Andrews' mom, Diana. He told us everything she said softly over the phone. We don't know what to say, but what we do know is this: you and Noah are still part of this family. I held the phone in silence for a long time, for a moment. I had believed that when Ethan walked away, his whole side of the world would turn their backs on me too, but they didn't. Sarah still called me dear, and in that moment it felt like a lifeline. Tom Ethan's dad stopped by the following weekend with a bag full of Noah's old favorite toys from their house. He bent down to Noah's level, holding out an old toy truck with a smile. "This little guy said he missed you, so I brought him to visit." Elliot squealed and hugged Robert like nothing had changed. And the truth was, with my son, love hadn't changed. Not one bit, but the person who brought me to tears was Sophie, Ethan's youngest sister, who'd always been the quiet one she visited on a cold, rainy Saturday afternoon, bringing homemade ginger cookies and a tiny t-shirt that said, "My aunt is awesome, we might not be sisters-in-law anymore," Sophie said, "but I'll always be Noah's aunt." I nodded, unable to speak after. That every weekend Noah was picked up to spend time with his grandparents. Sarah taught him how to bake. Tom showed him how to plant tomatoes in the backyard. Sophie would sit and draw with him for hours. I called them magic classes. Elliot called it his second home. One late afternoon, when I came to pick Noah up, Sarah invited me to stay for dinner. The dining table still had my old seat from when I was part of the family. But this time I wasn't Ethan's wife. I was just me, a single mom welcomed with warmth and genuine respect. As we finished washing dishes, Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder. "Diana, I know you're strong, but being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone." Those words etched themselves into me. They weren't pity. They were a reminder that I wasn't alone. A few months later, when Noah turned 4, I hosted a small birthday party at a park nearby, just a few close friends, coworkers, and Ethan's whole family after Noah blew out his candles. Margaret hugged me and whispered, "We may not be related by blood, but our hearts still choose you." That night, as I tucked Noah into bed, he wrapped his arms around my neck. "Mommy, I love you. I love Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Sophie too." I held him close, my tears soaking into his pillow. Maybe I lost a husband, but I gained something far more precious, a real family, one not bound by titles but by choice. I watched my son sleeping, the nightlight casting a glow over his tiny face. I made a silent vow. No matter what happens, I will never let him grow up without love, and if the world ever turns its back on me again, I'll turn it around just to keep him in the light. As time passed, life with Noah settled into a steady, gentle rhythm. My job at Harper & Lane grew beyond expectations. After 2 back-to-back successful campaigns for major brands, I was promoted to creative director for the Midwest region, a role most in the industry spend over 10 years reaching. I used my first bonus to put a down payment on a small home in the suburbs of Brookhaven, with a backyard big enough for Noah to run around and a sun-filled home office I jokingly called my post-divorce paradise a week after moving in. My phone rang, the caller ID showed my mom the woman who had practically vanished after Ava's engagement party. "Deanna, I heard you bought a house that's amazing," her voice chirped through the phone, unusually cheerful. "We'd love to visit if you don't mind." I paused for a few seconds, then gently said yes. Partly out of curiosity, partly because of Noah, they came on a Saturday afternoon, bringing a small gift bag and a box of ginger cookies. Mom hugged Noah like she hadn't missed his birthday 3 years in a row. Dad couldn't stop complimenting the new kitchen, the fridge. Even the hallway rug. Elliot, with his young heart untouched by rejection, was instantly friendly. He showed them his drawings, gave them a tour of the house, and even handed Grandma a paper crown he made himself. I stood at a distance, unsure if my heart should melt or freeze in the weeks that followed. My parents became more involved. They offered to watch Noah for a few hours on weekends, so I could rest, even brought pastries. When they visited, Elliot began calling my mom Grandma Linda naturally, and he'd excitedly retell how she read him fairy tales, or how Grandpa gave him candy from his coat pocket. I tried to tell myself, to welcome it in. Maybe everyone deserves a second chance. But then the thing I always feared started showing. It began with what seemed like a harmless dinner conversation. "Diana, we're getting the roof fixed. It's been leaking all winter." My dad sighed, his eyes drifting around my bright kitchen. "Things must be going well at your job. If you could help a little, we'd be so grateful." I nodded. It wasn't much. Just a few hundred. I sent it thinking of it as a thank you for the care they were starting to show. Then came Mom's dental bill, the broken old fridge, a late utility payment. I tried not to judge. I sent money like a responsible adult, not like the forgotten child I used to be. But one day after I closed a major deal with a startup in Silicon Valley, my LinkedIn post went viral across the industry. Less than 24 hours later, I got a text from Mom. Congrats, sweetheart. By the way, your dad's thinking of getting a used SUV for the winter, much safer if you could help with the down payment. That'd be amazing. I read the message and my heart sank, not a single word asking about Noah. No, thank you for the help. I'd already given just another request. Like I was their personal bank on speed dial, I didn't respond right away. I needed time to think that night. While folding Noah's clothes for school the next day, he suddenly said, Mom, Grandma gave me Ava's old toy today, but she said not to break it because Ava always took really good care of it. He looked up at me, eyes serious. I take care of my toys too, don't I? Mommy, I froze, a tiny scratch cut through my chest. The favoritism had never really gone away. It had just changed shape, softer, more subtle, but still sharp enough for a 4-year-old to feel it. I sat down and pulled Noah into my arms. Yes, sweetheart, you take really good care of your toys, and I'm proud of you every single day. That night I opened my phone and replied to my mother with just one sentence. I'm sorry. But from now on, everything I build will be for Noah, not to make up for what you never gave me. I didn't know how. She'd respond, but I knew one thing for sure: I wouldn't let history repeat itself through my son. Not again. That day began like any other. I was presenting a new campaign to the board when a sharp pain shot through my lower abdomen, cutting me off. Mid-sentence, everything after that played out like a fast-forward film, a coworker helping me out of the room, someone yelling for help, flashing lights. As the ambulance sped through intersections, I woke up in the ER4, in my arm, drenched in cold sweat. The doctor looked serious, Miss Claire. You have acute appendicitis. We need to operate immediately. This can't wait through the pain. All I could think about was Noah. He was at preschool and school ended at 3:30. I checked the clock, less than 2 hours. I need to call someone. Someone has to pick up my son, I whispered. They handed me my phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed my mother's number. Despite everything, a part of me hoped just this once she'd be the mother I had dreamed of. She answered on the 4th ring. Diana, what's going on, Mom? I'm at the hospital. I need emergency surgery. Can you pick up Noah? I can't. There was a pause, too long, too cold. Then her voice came, right? Oh, I don't think I can. We're getting ready for Ava's promotion party tonight. The restaurant's booked. Nearly 60 people are coming. I tried to stay. Calm, though, my insides felt like they were twisting. Mom, I'm lying in a hospital bed. Elliot needs someone to pick him up. He's your grandson, she sighed. Diana, why do you always make everything complicated? We're really busy, and Noah's always running around, asking questions hard to manage. I don't think watching him today is a good idea. Her words sliced through me, watching him. I repeated, barely believing what I was hearing. Elliot's not a burden you drop off. He's your grandson. But she said coldly, honestly, we can't handle him. He's a handful. That final sentence cut into every old scar I had. Then she hung up. I dropped the phone, my body numb. I didn't know what hurt more, the inflamed appendix or the way my mother had just severed the last thread tying us together. A nurse came rushing in to prep me for surgery just before they wheeled me away. I managed to make one more call to Sophie, Ethan's sister. She picked up immediately. Rachel, I'm at the hospital. I need surgery. Elliot's school. Let's out at 3:30. Can you? I'm going now, she said. Without hesitation, text me the school address. Elliot will stay at my place tonight. Tom and Margaret will be thrilled to see him. I cried. Not from pain, but because in that moment when every door seemed to slam shut, a light came through. The surgery was a success. When I woke up, soft light from the ceiling shone down, and next to me was a photo. Elliot grinning wide next to Sophie, and her dog Bully underneath in blue marker was a message: I slept so. Good Bully shared his blanket too. Love you. Mommy, Elliot, 2 days later. Sophie picked me up from the hospital in the car, she said quietly. Claire, I don't understand our parents, but I do understand one thing. Elliot isn't a burden. He's light in you. You're his whole sky. That night, back home, I took down every photo of my biological family from the walls. I replaced them with photos of Noah laughing and playing in his grandparents' backyard. I didn't need an apology. I just needed to keep Noah away from love. That came with conditions, and I made a promise from that moment on. I would never let anyone treat my son as less than, no matter what title they carried. I recovered from surgery faster than expected, partly because my body was strong and partly because my spirit had received the clearest wake-up call of my life during my time in the hospital and those quiet days recovering at home. I had a lot of time to reflect about my mom, my dad, Ava, and myself, the woman who had been far too patient with a family that only ever saw her as a backup plan the night I came home after Noah had fallen asleep. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and canceled every recurring transfer to my parents. I removed them as beneficiaries and opened a new savings account for Noah, labeled it the Freedom Fund, because I knew that sometimes freedom isn't about running away from someone, it's about no longer letting them control your life. The next day, I blocked my mother's number, then my father's. I blocked their emails, their texts, and every social media platform. I used to stay polite. I didn't need to be polite anymore. I needed peace, and so did Noah. A week later, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. My mom knew I wouldn't answer her calls, so she tried the old-fashioned way, cream envelope, 3 full pages, written in that familiar cursive suite at the beginning, guilt-tripping in the middle, and blaming me by the end. She wrote that they were having serious financial trouble because Olivia couldn't help. As expected, that Dad had been denied a loan for a new car, that the house was at risk of foreclosure if they couldn't cover the winter bills, and the final line, "You're our only hope." I folded the letter without reading it a second time. I had once been their only hope, but not because they loved me, because I was useful a few days later. My mother called Sophie, asking her to pass along a message. Rachel refused. "Diana doesn't owe anyone an explanation," she said, "especially not people who once called her child a burden." Then came a message from Ava. "You're being dramatic. You know, sure, Mom and Dad made mistakes, but they're still our parents." I read that message while planting tomatoes with Noah in the backyard. He wore a funny little knit hat and giggled as dirt covered his hands. I simply replied, "When you have kids, you'll understand." Since that day, I haven't received another call or letter. Maybe they finally realized I'm no longer the old Claire who would sacrifice everything for a single crumb of approval. I've learned to stop begging for love and to start creating safety for myself and my son. A month later, I was walking with Noah at the park when we ran into his former preschool teacher. She looked at me and said, "You seem healthier and happier than I've ever seen you." I smiled. I just learned the most important lesson of my life. Not everyone who shares your blood is truly family in the evening. While Noah was curled up in my lap watching cartoons, he looked up and asked softly, "Mom, how come Grandma and Grandpa don't come visit anymore?" I hugged him tighter and ran my fingers through his hair. "Because I want to protect you from people who don't truly love you, and you deserve to be loved with a whole heart, not with conditions." Noah nodded, then went back to watching his show like the world kept turning in the simplest way, but for me, that moment was the clearest sign I had done the right thing. I don't know how my parents are doing now. I don't know if they still hope I'll come back, or if they've shifted all their expectations onto Ava. I don't check in, I don't ask, I don't care, because now I don't live for approval anymore. I live so Noah knows that real love never comes at the cost of your dignity. Life for Noah and me, after all the cuts, after all the firm choices, feels light, not because there aren't hard days, sleepless nights from work, or sudden fevers, but light. Because I no longer carry the weight of needing to be accepted, no longer flinch at every message or phone call from people who once called themselves family. We started rebuilding our lives in our own way, early mornings with coffee brewing while Noah doodled at the kitchen table. Sunday dinners at Robert and Margaret's Tom always made. Noah's favorite barbecue, and Margaret knew my taste down to the last spoonful of sauce. Rachel, with her ever-present camera, captured the most beautiful frames of this little family I never thought I'd have. One day, after gardening, Noah sat on the porch steps with crayons and drawing paper. He was sketching a big tree with wide branches, each branch holding a person. I asked, "What kind of tree is that, sweetie?" "A family tree." Noah replied, pointing to each one. "This is you, this is me, this is Grandpa Robert, Grandma Margaret, Aunt Sophie, and Buddy." Buddy was the little dog Sophie recently adopted, now Noah's best buddy. That's when I realized not a single name from the past, from those who hurt us, appeared on that tree. No Linda, no James, no Ava. Elliot had chosen his family, and he chose right at night when he was fast asleep. I'd often sit alone in the living room, soft yellow light spreading across the wooden floor. I think about the days in Maple Creek when I was the quiet girl behind the door watching Ava get showered with praise, while I was left with a bowl of cold cereal. Now I wasn't standing behind any doors anymore. I had stepped out, carved my own path, and built a home. Where happiness. I didn't need anyone's permission one afternoon. Sophie and I took Noah to the fall festival at the Central Park when he asked to ride the ponies. Sophie beamed. Aunt Sophie is the official photographer today. She took dozens of pictures of Noah, his eyes sparkling in the golden autumn sun that night while I was cleaning up. Noah suddenly hugged me from behind and whispered, "Mommy, do I have a real family?" I turned around and knelt to his level. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" A kid at school said, "My parents are divorced, so I'm alone, but I'm not alone, right?" I hugged him tightly, choking up. "No, baby, you're not alone. You have me, Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt Sophie, buddy. You have a whole world that loves you more than anything." Noah nodded firmly, as if he needed to hear it just one last time to believe it. "Then I'm going to draw a heart on our family tree." I smiled gently, brushing his hair, "And I'll always be the strongest branch for you to lean on whenever you need." The days that followed passed peacefully. I no longer looked for calls from the past, no longer waited for overdue apologies, because now I already had everything I ever longed for. Not through blood, but through choice. I chose genuine love. I chose safety. For my son, and I chose myself. Diana's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone who shares your blood deserves a place in your life. Real love doesn't come from duty. It comes from choice and respect. When we have the courage to cut ties with toxic relationships, we don't just save ourselves, we create a healthy space for the next generation to grow. Diana chose unconditional love for her son and for herself, a brave, wise, and beautiful choice. What do you think of Claire's decision? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more touching stories about family and